Okay, welcome. So this is our introduction to the digital format on the LSAT, and the digital format presents an opportunity to bring a new and fresh approach to the LSAT, and that, well, what's new and fresh to the LSAT is old and established in law. And that approach is more often than not referred to IRAC, issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. And it is how you will learn in law school. So now with this digital format, we have an opportunity to change the tired, old methodology of process of elimination, and in its place, substitute IRAC, which will serve you well in the LSAT and serve you well in law school. So let's prepare for law school by preparing correctly for the LSAT. And now we have a wonderful opportunity to demonstrate this. So without further ado, let's begin to attack from the digital LSAT, PrepTest 74, and we're going to start here with section 2, which is the logical reasoning section. And here is how you may want to attack the test. Question number 1. The issue is in the top right-hand side. Remember, we're using IRAC. So the issue appears on your top right, and that is the first thing you will read if you are a lawyer. And the issue is which one of the following most logically completes the argument. And you must understand the issue. I'm going to logically complete the argument. My directions are basically to read what the writer wrote and anticipate the writer's next sentence. What flows logically from what I heard. So I'm just taking what the writer wrote and expressing what the writer would have wrote, not what Peter would have wrote. Here goes. Children should be discouraged from reading Jones's book. There's a period, you stop. Reading textually is what you do when you apply IRAC. Reading textually means when you get the punctuation, stop. You have to understand what's to the left of it or you're toast. Sometimes that's straightforward and sometimes it's not. Here, it's straightforward. Children should be discouraged from reading Jones's books. I got it. Next sentence. Reading them is like eating candy. Stop for a second. Do you get we're no longer talking about books, we're talking about candy. The author is using the method of analogy. So this is now proceeding by analogy. We're not talking about candy. Reading them, the books, Jones's books, is like eating candy, which provides intense short-term sensory stimulation, but leaves one poorly nourished and dulls one's taste for better fare, period, you stop, I got it. So Jones's books have the same impact by analogy as eating candy. And the impact eating candy has is it dulls my appetite for more elaborate fare in place of, by giving me short-term sensory stimulation. Next sentence. In other words, the problem with letting children read Jones's book is that it acts like candy. Is that the problem with letting your children read Jones's books is they get short-term stimulus from it, but it deters them from moving on to more challenging reading. Period, good night, lights out, you're done. That is understanding the issue and understanding the rule, and in logical reasoning, the rule is the argument. That is what governs, not whether I agree with it, it is. So that's the rule of law. So I've taken the issue, logically complete, I've read the law textually, I have done analysis because of reading it textually, and I have the conclusion before I've ever looked at the conclusion choices. Now all I'm doing is turning this into a recognition test. The writer did what I just did. What are the words the writer used to express it? And when those words are clear and convincing, that is to say, when I recognize those words and they're clear and convincing that have expressed my thought, it becomes whack-a-mole, right? You say, you what? It's a psychometric test. This becomes, you know what? I'm the lawyer. I have to be decisive. I have prepared. That's what my mind produced. whack that mole. Forget the process of elimination. I mean, it has a mild role, but man, not primary. Okay, when do I whack the mole? So here I am in this new format, and I would tend to follow it here, to come down and say, so does it logically complete the argument that it will lead them to develop a taste for candy and sweets, and that's why we have the word stupid in our language? No. B, too many children may become frustrated by their difficulty and stop reading altogether? No. C, they're doing so, that is to say, they're reading Jones's books. They're doing so interferes with the development of appreciation for more challenging literature. Whack that mole. I'll read D and E for the purposes of video. You've got to get, this is a psychometric test. Some question items are designed to be readily solved. You have to whack that mole. D, their messages undermine, Jones's messages may undermine the positive teaching done by parents. No. Jones and children may become so enthralled with the books they want to spend all their time reading. No. So the answer is C, move on, but again, as I can't stress enough, you gotta whack that mole. Where it's clear, not where it's not clear. Where it's clear, you gotta whack that mole. Question number 2. Issue, you're gonna read the top right. Again, this is a new format. On the paper format, the issue is beneath the law, beneath the rule, right? On the digital format, it's off to your right. You have to train your eye. Question number 2. Which one of the following, if true, adds the most support for the archaeologist's hypothesis? Stop. I've been directed that there is a hypothesis in this argument. I've been directed to support the hypothesis. So as I read this, okay, when I get to the hypothesis, stop, that's the hypothesis, let me support it. Now, remember, here comes the rule, the law. Archaeologists. How did the Parthenon stonemasons manage to carve columns that all bulged outward in the center in precisely the same way? Stop. Okay, the question is posed. I don't know how they did it, but that's their question. Next sentence. One hypothesis, remember hypothesis, right? Support. If this is the only hypothesis, we support this. One hypothesis is suggested by the discovery of a scale drawing of a column etched into the stone of a Greek temple at wherever that is, Didyma, I have no clue, stop. The second sentence gives us a hypothesis, and it suggests that whatever happened at the Parthenon was facilitated by the discovery of a scale drawing of a column. Okay, somewhere they found a scale drawing of a column in this place, right? And it was etched into the stone. So the discovery of that scale drawing played a role in the building of the Parthenon. Next sentence. The drawing, that's the scale drawing. The drawing is a profile view of a column surrounded by a grid, which makes it possible to determine the correct width at every height of the column. So that third sentence is a description of the scale drawing. Okay. Finally, the stonemasons who carved the Parthenon's columns may have relied on a drawing like one. So it doesn't have to be the one, but they relied on a drawing like one, like the one at Didyma. Okay. The hypothesis you get, the hypothesis is the scale drawing. The scale drawing has to play a role in how the Parthenon got built. That's it. And okay, so I want to find that information. Let's see what we have. Scale drawing played a role in the Parthenon's building. A, modern attempts to recreate columns like those at the Parthenon have only been partially successful. It's like, you gotta be kidding me. B, the construction of the temple at Didyma was begun over a century after the Parthenon was constructed. Well, that weakens the hypothesis. It certainly doesn't support it. It's stupid people. C, scale drawings were commonly used in many types of construction in ancient Greece. So if C is true, scale drawings were available, or likely were available, in Athens, in the area where the Parthenon was built at the time the Parthenon was built. So C is probably the answer. I'm not whacking the ball on this one. I want to keep reading, but I'll put C over there. D, the surviving columns at Digimon are almost twice as tall as the columns at the Parthenon. Who cares? E, the Parthenon stonemasons had considerable experience carving columns before they started work on the Parthenon. Who cares? The answer is C. I'm out of here. Question number 3. The issue, upper right, read upper right. The issue, the argument in the editorial most closely conforms to which one of the following principles? Principles, very heavy, well, you're going to get about 5 principal issues, generally speaking. Okay, what's a principle? Principle is a broad statement. So when you're directed to here, when you want to conform to a principle will be a broader statement. And what I'm going to read is a hypothetical or an example. So let me get that. I'm going to say, okay, let's see what I have here. But again, if you're thinking about drawing a principle, if the principle has to do with, if you want to create a principle about mammals, right? But you have a lot of different options. You can do, humans, you can do whales, there's a lot of options for mammals, right? So those are examples. So the principle, think about when you're solving for principle, then the information you're reading about is about an example of the principle. So you're going to go from the specific to the general when it's presented this way. Okay. Editorial. The government should not fund any part of its health services with lottery revenue. Stop. Slash mark would be, you just stop. You say, okay. That's the example. So my attention is directed specifically to health services and specifically with lottery revenue, and don't do it. Don't fund health services with lottery revenue. Okay. Next sentence. These health services are essential to our community. Hang on one second. Haven't we now assigned health services to the category of things that are essential, and that there may well be essential services that are not health services? I mean, lots of other services may be health services. So now, essential services, which is broader, covers health services, which is narrower. Okay, so these health services are essential to our community. But lottery revenue could decline at some time in the future. Hang on. So lottery revenue was the example. Now you're talking about revenue, which may decline. So health services has morphed into essential services. Lottery revenue has morphed into revenue that could decline at some time in the future. And the argument wraps up here, leaving the government scrambling to make up a budget shortfall. So wouldn't it be fair to say it is likely here that the principle has to do with essential services and their funding? And more specifically, essential services should not be funded by revenues that may not be reliable. And I'm done. Now, all that work is done before you look at an answer choice. I've identified the issue and I understand the issue. I've read the law textually, the rule, and I've got it. I performed the analysis, that's what we're doing. I already have the answer in my mind. Let's see what we have here. A, government should spend more of their revenue on essential services rather than on non-essential services. Well, this is not about spending your revenue on it. This is about, more specifically, essential services need secure revenue funding. B, essential government services must be funded from reliable sources of revenue. And I got to whack them all. And that's just, hello, I'm gone. So B is the answer. And I'm telling you B is the answer, and of course I don't, so we can reveal the answer here. And the answer here is B. And I'm out of here. I'm not looking back at this. And just to go back to question number 2, just to make sure we're right, we have C, we reveal the answer is C, we go back to answer choice 1, we have C, and we reveal the answer with 3 for 3, we're smoking. Question number 4. Which one of the following is true most helps to support the scientist's hypothesis? So it's the same as we just had. I'm going to read a hypothesis, right? I want to be aware of that, and I'm supporting it. And where I can articulate, really, what my mind has formed, and the answer choice I look at is clear and convincing. You have to have some kind of a standard, right? So I'm not saying you do this on every question, you don't. But where you look at an answer choice and it's clear and convincing that it reflects what your mind produced, you have to whack that ball. Here goes. Scientists, rattlesnakes prey on young California ground squirrels. Period, stop. Got it. Protective adult squirrels harass a threatening rattlesnake by puffing up their tails and wagging them. Stop. Who cannot see in their mind's eye the squirrel's tail puffing up? Got it. And wagging. Okay. Next sentence. New results show that the squirrel's tail also heats up when harassing a rattlesnake. So not only is the tail larger, there's heat coming out of it. I still haven't got the hypothesis. Since rattlesnakes, now not the squirrels, rattlesnakes, since rattlesnakes have an infrared sensing organ that detects body heat, I got it? The heating up of the squirrel's tail probably plays a role in repelling rattlesnakes. I got it, I still have this. I mean, where is Aristotle? So, the snake senses the heat and, kind of stays away from the squirrel. So we want to support, reinforce, strengthen that proposition. Okay, that the rattlesnake senses the heat and backs away. Okay, let's see what we have here. A, rattlesnakes do not have the ability to increase the temperature of their tails. Who cares? It's stupid. It's that's a rattlesnake's tail, it's the squirrel's tail. B, squirrels puff up their tails and wag them when they attempt to attract the attention of other squirrels. No, what, we're making this like a gang fight? Yeah, let me get all my buddies, we're gonna take the rattlesnake on as a group. No, that's not what it is. It's why is the rattlesnake reacting the way the rattlesnake reacts? C, rattlesnakes react much more defensively when confronted with a squirrel whose tail is heated up than when confronted with one whose tail is not. Whack that ball. Bada bing, bada boom, and get out of there. So make sure you click C. I'm stopping, I'm not looking at anything else. Now, if we want to see if we're right here, fell off the screen on that one. There you go, the answer is C. So we're 4 for 4. Let's go to question number 5. 5. Which one of the following most accurately describes a flaw in the critic's reasoning? Again, you've got to brief all of these issues. Nothing changes on this test. So if you don't understand what flaws are, you're not going to do well. If you don't understand what principles are, you're not going to do well. If you don't understand how to strengthen an argument, you're not going to do well. And if you can't do those things, you're not going to be a lawyer. 5. So the issue is which one of 5 most accurately describes a flaw. Okay, so now I'm looking for fatal defect. The reasoning, the conclusion, and the conclusion simply is not adequately supported by the reasoning, and when I can explain why, I have the answer. Critic. Fillmore, an influential television executive, argues that watching television regularly is not detrimental to very young children. Stop. I now know Fillmore's position. I know what Fillmore does for a living, right? He's a television executive, and he argues that watching TV regularly is not detrimental to young children. Next sentence. Fillmore bases this on the claim, okay, which I grant. So the critic agrees with, so whatever's coming, the critic agrees with, that Fillmore bases his claim, which I grant, that children can learn much that is beneficial from television. So after the second sentence, we could enter a stipulation in court. The stipulation would be both parties agree that children can learn very much from television. Okay? Final sentence. But we should reject Fillmore's argument. Now that's the conclusion. And it's a flawed conclusion. Okay, tell me why, since you've just finished stipulating that children benefit from it. But we should clearly reject Fillmore's conclusion because clearly it is to Fillmore's benefit to convince parents that television is not harmful to their children. And this is right out of the interested witness jury instruction that I would request as a DA. All right, so that flaw that Fillmore has skin in the game. You acknowledge Fillmore has skin in the game. You acknowledge that an interest in the outcome might influence somebody, but you don't say simply because a person may have interest in the income, it has influenced them, or it has defeated the reasoning that that person has given. That's just silly. So the flaw in this argument is that the critic is attacking Fillmore simply by saying, well, because you're in the industry and you stand to benefit from it, I'm going to reject any argument that you make, no matter how meritorious, even if I agree with it. So again, I don't have the words, but I'm quite confident when we see the answer, we'll know it. Okay, A. So is the flaw that it takes a necessary condition for something's being harmful to be a sufficient condition for being harmful? No, and if you don't have a clear understanding of what a necessary condition is, and if you don't have a clear understanding of what a sufficient condition is, you sit there now and you're analyzing it. If you come out of the argument saying, you know what I'm looking for? Fillmore has skin in the game is not a reason to refute Fillmore's reasoning, particularly when I agree with Fillmore's reasoning. It's all about IRAC. If you do not form the contours of the credited answer in your mind when you're done, I don't really think the answers are going to help. B. It concludes that something is true merely on the ground that there is no evidence to the contrary. That's got nothing to do with what my mind produced. I'm looking for Fillmore has skin in the game. C. It rejects an argument solely on the ground that the argument could serve the interests of the person making the argument. And I'll look at, D&E here, but I'm whacking that mole. So just, for me, whack that mole. Because if you, you're rejecting Fillmore's argument on the grounds that he may benefit, that he has interest in it, in the outcome. D, it's based on an appeal to the view of someone with questionable authority on the subject matter. That's simply not there. And E, it bases its conclusion on claims that are inconsistent with one another. No. So the answer is C. You should whack the mole of C and get out of there. And I urge you, if you're reviewing this, right, and you've gotten some of these questions wrong, and I'll just make sure we have this right, go figure. If you're getting these wrong, I urge you, forget about the reasoning process that got you to the wrong answer. That was the old you, right? Focus like a laser beam on understanding why the credited answer is the credited answer, and you will begin thinking like a lawyer. All right, let's try here. We go to question number, question number, I didn't fill it in. So we're in 5. Well, I did here, 5. This is 5, okay. There you go, question number 6. Which one of the following, if true, most seriously weakens the argument? Okay, so now I'm weakening. Got it. I have my assignment, weaken. Here's the argument. This is the law. While grapefruit juice is a healthy drink, it has been discovered that a chemical in the juice affects how certain medicines are absorbed, with the result that normal medicinal doses act like higher doses. Now, for me, this sentence is written in a less friendly way. So I would hold it up here. I've made plenty of time on the first 5. Let me get this again. So we acknowledge grapefruit juice is a healthy drink. It has been discovered that there's a chemical in the juice. You see the word chemical? There's a chemical in there that affects. It's not the grapefruit juice. It's the chemical in the grapefruit juice that affects how, maybe I'm taking Advil or something, right? And you're saying here that chemical in the grapefruit juice impacts the dose that would have been prescribed for me, with the result that the medicinal dose, that what was prescribed for me, ends up acting, having a greater effect than expected. Okay. Next sentence. Getting the wrong dose is dangerous. Okay. So there is a danger here. So you get the connection between drinking the grapefruit juice, in that it has that chemical in it, and there's a danger that if you take the medication with that, it may mess up what the prescribed dose should have been. I got it. Since it is always desirable to take the lowest effective dose, the best medical approach would be to take lower doses of these medicines along with the prescribed amount of grapefruit juice. Now we want to weaken that, right? And the argument is, because of that chemical, right? What's best to do here is take a lower dose, so you might have been prescribed a higher dose, right? But because this chemical in grapefruit juice can affect that, you're now advised to always take the lower dose with the prescribed amount of grapefruit juice. And you want to weaken that argument. It all goes back to the chemical. Doesn't that conclusion always take the lower dose? Assume that the amount, that the chemical presence in the grapefruit juice is always the same. What happens if the chemical in the grapefruit juice varies from, maybe it varies from grapefruit to grapefruit, I don't know. But maybe one glass you pick up and there's a lot of that in it, a lot of the chemical, maybe a different glass of grapefruit juice, there isn't a lot in it. So if I want to weaken this argument, I'm heading for that chemical. Let's see where they go. A, the amount of the chemical in grapefruit juice is highly unpredictable from glass to glass. And for me, where's my whack-a-mole? Do you get it? The writer is using words that reflect the thought, if you can follow along with me, right? And if your mind can produce those outcomes before you look at that answer choice, and if you have the psychology of a lawyer, you're not going to be afraid to be wrong from time to time, but you're going to have an attitude, you're going to have a presence, and you're going to pull the trigger. So I'm out of here. I whack that mole. I'm going to reveal the answer here, and nope. Let's see, where'd that answer go? Oh, lo and behold, the answer is A. All right, we'll take one more in this segment. We'll stop here at 7. Let's go here at 7, see what we have. The salesperson's advice to the landlord most closely conforms to which one of the following principles? Example, principle. These will become so familiar if you just keep repeating it. You gotta breathe. You gotta breathe. You gotta take each issue one at a time. You gotta forget about tricks and shortcuts. And you gotta learn to prepare the way an attorney prepares. Okay, so now I'm gonna go from a specific to a general. And here's what I get. A landlord needed to replace the air conditioning unit in a small rental home. Air conditioning unit, small rental home. The salesperson at the appliance store showed the landlord 2 air conditioning units with identical prices. So the air conditioning unit is the example, and appliance would be a broader term for air conditioning unit. Okay. So here have identical prices. She told the landlord, the salesperson, told the landlord that the Snow Queen, so now Snow Queen's an example, Snow Queen was the most powerful unit for the price. So we no longer care about Snow Queen, we now care about powerful unit. But advised him, the salesperson advised him to purchase the less powerful Freezol. So now we no longer care about Freezol, we care about less powerful. Saying that Freezol was powerful enough for his needs. What's the principle? The principle, in a number of ways of phrasing this, but when the price is the same, and you have a more powerful and a less powerful unit, you go with the less powerful unit, and the type of things you're talking about here are appliances. Okay, let's see what we have here. All that's done. If you just prepare, you'll be able to do this. Unless God has other plans, in which case you're not going to be able to do it. Okay, A. When the prices of 2 different brands of a particular home appliance are identical, either of the products can satisfy the needs of the consumer. That's just stupid. I mean, how do you reason this way and then pick A? It's stupid. B, when a consumer is choosing between 2 different brands of a particular home appliance, the consumer should select the less powerful product only if it is also less expensive. No. I mean, it was swell up until only if it is less expensive, because we're picking it even when it's at the same price. So no, nice try, no. So B is not the answer. C, a salesperson should always recommend that a customer buy the product that represents the best value. No. And you can see here, you're going to have to get used to this. However you want to do it, you can scroll down on this new thing, or you can hit those arrows. Man, start practicing. So I'm just setting the arrows. I may scroll down, but again, I'm not working on a tablet. You'll be working on a tablet. D, when advising customers about a purchase of a home appliance, a salesperson should direct the customer towards the product that yields the highest commission for the salesperson. I mean, that's disease. That's so bad, it's disease. I mean, you have just completely lost the law. To pick D means that's just what you think about salespersons, but that's not what we're doing here. E, when a consumer, let me scroll down a little bit here if I can, there you go. When a consumer is choosing a home appliance, the consumer should choose the least powerful product that meets his or her needs. I'd whack them all, but they made a choice E, but E is the answer for sure. Reveal the answer, let's go down here, reveal the answer, and I think, if I'm not mistaken here, we're gonna be 7 for 7, let's see. It's a little sneaky here, let's go up here. There you go, the answer is E. So that's the first segment. We'll come back and we'll start with question number 8, but this is the way to do it.